You got paid recently. Maybe it was this week. Maybe it hits your account on a specific date every month and you already know exactly how much will be there and exactly how fast it will disappear. You probably didn't think much about it. Money came in, money went out. That's just how life works. But here's what you never stop to ask. Who decided that's how life works? Who was the first person to look at another human being and say, I will give you something in exchange for your time, your labor, your effort? And more importantly, who was the first person to accept? Because that moment, that specific, quiet, unremarkable transaction between two people who had no idea what they were starting, is the foundation of every salary, every paycheck, every minimum wage argument, every labor strike, every financial anxiety you have ever felt in your entire life. And it happened in a way that would make your bank transfer look like science fiction. You probably assume the first payment involved money. Coins, or something like coins, some kind of currency changing hands between a worker and whoever was in charge. That's not what happened. The oldest known payment record in human history was found on a clay tablet in ancient Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, dating to around 3000 BCE, roughly 5,000 years ago. And when archaeologists translated it, they found something that should make you look at your payslip differently. It wasn't money, it was beer. A stick figure, the world's oldest wage record, showed a human head eating from a bowl. Next to it, a symbol for beer, repeated across the tablet for multiple workers. Your earliest recorded ancestor wasn't paid in currency, wasn't paid in gold, wasn't paid in anything you could put in a bank. They were paid in alcohol. And here's the thing, it made complete sense. Think about what money actually is for a second. Not philosophically, practically. Money is useful because you can exchange it for the things you need to survive. Food, shelter, safety, that's it. Strip away everything else, and that's the entire point of getting paid. Now, think about ancient Mesopotamia, 5,000 years ago. There were no supermarkets, no rent payments, no utility bills. If someone gave you coins, you'd have to find someone willing to exchange those coins for food. And that system barely existed yet. But beer was calories. Beer was nutrition. Beer was social currency. Beer got you through a day of hard physical labor in the heat. Beer was everything money is supposed to be. Except you could drink it. Your ancestor wasn't being paid badly. They were being paid in the most practical thing available, and they probably didn't complain. But here's what that clay tablet doesn't tell you, because 5,000 years ago is not the beginning. It's just the beginning of the written record, the beginning of the evidence that survived long enough for you to find, the actual first payment. The first moment one human gave another something in exchange for work happened tens of thousands of years before anyone thought to write it down, and it didn't look anything like what you'd recognize as payment. Think about your ancestors 100,000 years ago. Small groups, 15 to 50 people, everyone doing what needed to be done to keep the group alive. Hunting, gathering, building shelter, caring for children, tending fire. No one was getting paid because no one owned anything to pay with, because the concept of exchanging value for labor hadn't been invented yet. But then something started to shift, slowly, almost imperceptibly, across thousands of years. Specialization. Some people in the group got very good at specific things. One person made better tools than everyone else. Another knew which plants healed wounds. Another could track animals across terrain that baffled everyone else. And the group started to notice. Anthropologist Richard Wrangham at Harvard spent years studying the earliest evidence of division of labor in human groups. His finding, specialization, didn't just make groups more efficient, it created the first version of something your ancestors had never experienced before. Dependency. You needed the toolmaker. The toolmaker needed you. And once you need each other, once your survival depends on what someone else can do that you can't, the concept of exchange becomes inevitable, not a choice, a necessity. Your ancestors didn't invent payment because they were clever. They invented it because they had no other option. And here's where it gets strange, because the first payments weren't things. They weren't objects changing hands. They weren't beer or grain or tools. They were favors. Anthropologist Marcel Mauss spent decades studying the earliest human economies across dozens of cultures with no contact with each other. His conclusion, before money, before barter, before any physical exchange, humans ran on something he called gift economy. You do something for me, I owe you something back. No contract, no timeline, no written record, just the understanding, ancient, biological, completely automatic, that a debt now exists between us. You feel this right now, without realizing it. Someone holds a door open for you and something inside you registers an obligation. A friend helps you move and for months afterward you feel the quiet pull of owing them something. Someone buys you a drink and before they've put the glass down, you're already thinking about buying the next round. That feeling isn't politeness. It isn't social conditioning. It's the oldest payment system your species ever built, running inside you right now, exactly the way it ran inside your ancestors 100,000 years ago. But then agriculture happened, and everything broke. Around 10,000 years ago, your ancestors stopped moving and started farming, and farming created something that had never existed before in the entire history of your species: surplus. For the first time ever, there was more food than the group needed right now, which meant someone had to store it, manage it, decide who got how much, and that person, the one controlling the surplus, had something no human being had ever had before: leverage. You want food? I have food. Do this work, and I'll give you some. That's the moment everything changed. That's when the favor economy, the ancient mutual gift system your ancestors had run on for tens of thousands of years, started breaking down, because now the exchange wasn't between equals who needed each other. It was between someone who had something and someone who didn't. Sound familiar? And this is where the beer tablet comes back, because those workers in ancient Mesopotamia drinking their wages weren't free people negotiating a fair exchange. They were most likely conscripted laborers, slaves, prisoners, people who had no choice about whether they showed up to work that day. The beer wasn't a salary in any sense you'd recognize. It was subsistence, enough to keep a body functional for another day of labor. The world's first recorded wage wasn't a worker being valued. It was a worker being maintained. And here's what should stop you. That distinction between being valued and being maintained is the argument at the center of almost every labor dispute that has happened in the 5,000 years since that tablet was pressed into clay. Are you being paid what you're worth, or just enough to keep you coming back tomorrow? Your ancestors asked that question first. They just didn't have the language for it yet. The first actual evidence of workers demanding more comes from Egypt around 1170 BCE. Workers building the royal tombs in a place called Deir el-Medina stopped working, put down their tools, refused to continue, not because of abuse, because their grain rations hadn't arrived on time, and they were hungry. This was the first recorded labor strike in human history, nearly 3,200 years ago. And their argument was simple: we are not working until we are paid what we were promised. They won. The rations came. They went back to work. Your ancestors, 3,200 years ago, looked at the people controlling the surplus and said no. Not until you hold up your end. Every labor movement that has happened since then is the same argument, same stakes, same power imbalance, same moment of someone deciding that being maintained wasn't enough. Here's the full picture. 100,000 years ago, your ancestors paid each other in favors, in obligations, in the ancient unspoken understanding that what you give will come back to you somehow. 10,000 years ago, farming created surplus, and surplus created leverage, and leverage created the gap between the person with something and the person without. 5,000 years ago, someone pressed a clay tablet recording the first known wage, beer, for a day's work. 3,200 years ago, your ancestors put down their tools and refused to continue until they were paid what they were owed. And today, you check your bank account on payday and feel that specific combination of relief and immediate anxiety as you watch the number go up and then start coming back down. Nothing about that feeling is new. Your ancestors felt it standing in line for their grain rations, felt it waiting to see if the favor they were owed would actually be returned. Felt it sitting outside the tomb they were building, refusing to go back in until someone made it right. The currency changed, the leverage changed, the names and the numbers and the systems changed. The feeling of waiting to be paid what you're worth never did. You're still waiting, just like the first human who ever was.